everyone, it's Ocean Unknown and welcome back to my channel. This is the second video in my series where I'm analyzing every single Danganronpa execution. So today, we're talking about all the executions in the second game, Super Danganronpa 2, Goodbye Despair. This series is inspired by Weeby News, who did a series with this topic a few years back, but I wanted to share my thoughts on the Danganronpa executions as well. First and foremost, this video contains massive spoilers for the first and second Danganronpa games, so as always, proceed with caution! Also, if this is the type of content you'd like to see from me and on your page, please make sure to like this video, leave comments, and subscribe to join the SeaBunnies. Without further ado, let's start.
The first execution in Goodbye Despair is the Monobeast execution of Monomi.
Most people don't consider this an execution, but I want to include it. But this section, like this execution, will be incredibly short.
Monokuma uses Monomi as an example to the students to show what happens if you defy him and the killing game, and Monomi is shot multiple times by one of the Monobeasts. For some context before this, Monokuma forcibly changed Monomi, whose real name is Usami, to change her name and appearance to match his, which oddly enough is very similar to Alter Ego's execution in the first game, to the point where I don't think that's just a coincidence, especially since Usami was created using Chihiro's research into programming. Both Alter Ego and Usami, two of Chihiro's creations, are stripped of their identity by Monokuma as a way to spread despair amongst their respective casts of students, and to serve as a warning to the students who may try to escape or stop the killing game. Monokuma also humiliates Usami by making her wear a diaper and act as his sister, which further incites despair. Although Monomi has extra copies of herself and is seen throughout this game, the first execution does set the killing game in motion, plus the parallels to Alter Ego are very interesting, and creates a scary warning for the students. Next is the first main execution, Deep Fried Teruteru. After being voted as the first culprit, Teruteru is dragged by the neck by a metal chain, which is a callback to the first execution of the first game with Leon's execution, and Teruteru is brought onto the beach. Monokuma then shoots several missiles at him, which douse him in egg, flour, and breadcrumbs. Teruteru is dragged by the feet to a volcano, where he is dropped in, and as the name of the execution suggests, deep fried. First of all, this execution places massive emphasis on the change in scenery compared to the first game, since the students are trapped on a tropical island. However, it can be interpreted that this choice is also relevant to Teruteru's character. In his free time events, he constantly mentions how he's from an urban area and how much he misses the big city. By forcing him to die on an island far away from his typical surroundings, this would give him a good amount of despair. Additionally, the Japanese name of Teruteru's execution is Tonkatsu no Hanamura, which refers to deep fried pork cutlets that are often used in Japanese cooking. While Teruteru's cause of death makes perfect sense with his talent as the ultimate cook, it's possible this execution method was chosen for Teruteru because of his personality as well. Throughout the game, Teruteru is a massive pervert, and one could call him a pig. He's even drawn as a pig in the title card for his execution. Also, he utilizes meat in his murder plan as he stabbed the ultimate imposter with an iron skewer and hit the weapon through putting meat on the skewer. In death, he became just a piece of meat, which represents both his cooking, his plan, and how he treated people. Next is arguably the best execution in this game, and it's my personal favorite as well, One Woman Army.
But first, we need some context.
The person being executed here, Peko Pekoyama, was very close with another student in the game, Fuyuhiko. Peko and Fuyuhiko were raised together, and Peko was trained from a very early age to be Fuyuhiko's personal bodyguard and hitman. Due to this training and her loyalty to Fuyuhiko, Peko thought of herself as merely a tool for Fuyuhiko to use, and this mindset leads to the events of Chapter 2. With the Twilight Syndrome murder case motive, Fuyuhiko wanted to enact revenge on Mahiru since the motive revealed that Mahiru was involved in his sister's death. Peko knew about Fuyuhiko's plan, and because she wanted to help Fuyuhiko escape the killing game, she decided to kill Mahiru herself, which completely shocked Fuyuhiko. Peko fully intended to be used as Fuyuhiko's tool by carrying out his plan so she could be wrongfully chosen as the culprit and Fuyuhiko could escape. However, that's not how the class trials work at all. By killing Mahiru, Peko was the culprit, and she and only she would be executed if the other students voted for her as the culprit, which is exactly what happens. Upon hearing how Peko views herself as just a tool meant to follow orders, Fuyuhiko insists that he has never viewed her that way, and pleads for her to stay with him. However, her execution begins. Peko is placed on top of a mountain and is surrounded by wooden samurai robots. Monokuma holds a doll of Peko, which controls her movements as she fights the robots. However, while all of this is happening, Fuyuhiko is there, trying to get to Peko. Fuyuhiko gets very close to her, but one of the robots sneaks behind Peko as Peko slices it in half, but hits Fuyuhiko in the process. Seeing that she hurt the person she's devoted her whole life to, she lays down her sword and holds a weak Fuyuhiko in her arms. But one of the samurai robots stabs Peko in the back. Right away, all of the robots stab Peko to death.
Peko's execution is undoubtedly one of the most emotional in the series.
This is the first time in the series that someone tries to interfere with an execution, and Fuyuhiko is trying to disrupt Peko's execution not only to save her, but also to show her that she isn't a tool. However, Peko's execution further enforces to her the idea that she is a tool, especially with the doll that Monokuma uses to control her movements. Since Peko is the ultimate swordswoman, her execution is quite befitting of her title as well. Lastly, the saddest part of Peko's execution is the emotions felt before and during it. Right before she is executed, Peko says she is content with dying because she was simply a tool, and says that she won't give in to despair during her execution. Monokuma insists that she will cry tears of despair, and even before her execution begins, she is severely distraught after Fuyuhiko begs her to stay with him. During the execution, because she is being controlled as the tool she sees herself as, she ends up hurting the person she cared about the most in the process. In the end, Peko's ideology that she's a tool to be used ended up giving her the most pain, and causing her to cry tears of despair seconds before she died. Next is Akane Awari's failed execution, and this is another really short one. In chapter 3, Akane challenges Monokuma to a duel, and in the process, she breaks the rules of the killing game. He aims a bazooka at her once the rest of the students are on the beach and can witness Akane's execution. However, Nekomaru steps in and takes the blow, which kills him.
While this execution has nothing to do with Akane's personality or her being the ultimate gymnast, I have a few interpretations for this scene. But first, once again, context.
Before Goodbye Despair was released, Akane was initially supposed to be the rival character instead of Nagito. She was supposed to be a lot more brash, stubborn, and competitive, and meant to constantly combat Hajime's ideas. This is also proven by the fact that Awari in Japanese means end, which contrasts Hajime, which means beginning. Also, her original title wasn't even the ultimate gymnast. She was meant to be the ultimate sinner, criminal, or thief, and she was supposed to be a quote-unquote evil lady. However, there has also been a rumor for years that not only was Akane supposed to be the rival of Goodbye Despair, but she was also supposed to be the mastermind. The evidence for this rumor is that Akane's outfit looks very similar to Junko's beta design, and also her original personality and backstory. This is just a theory, but this does actually give a very interesting insight into this execution. Now, whose execution in the past game is this one most like? Oh yeah! Mukuro's. Since Akane and Mukuro are the only students to have an execution brought upon them because they broke the rules of the killing game, and if we go with the theory that Akane was in contention to be the mastermind, it's likely that this scene was intended to foreshadow that reveal due to the similarity to Mukuro's execution. Lastly, this is the only execution that kills a student that the execution wasn't intended for when Nekomaru sacrificing himself for Akane. In a way, this execution still gives Akane despair even though she survived because her closest friend and ally died right in front of her. Next is Mikon Sumiki's execution, Bye Ouchies.
Before I say anything about this execution, massive trigger warnings will be put here with the timestamps if anyone would like to skip this section.
Mikon, the ultimate nurse, lies in a hospital bed as Monokuma rushes to her with a giant syringe and injects the floor beneath the bed. The hospital setting is dismantled and the fluid in the syringe causes the floor to turn into a giant mechanical arm. Monokuma continues to inject the arm until it turns red and squirms, and the arm rocket launches Mikon into space. We don't see Mikon die, so we are left to assume that she asphyxiated in space. First of all, let's get the problematic stuff out of the way. Mikon is seen to be experiencing a lot of pleasure during her execution, and there are several quote-unquote fan service shots while she is dying, and this is a big part of the biggest issue with how Mikon is written as a character. Mikon outright tells Hajime that she has been severely abused in the past, and her behavior and actions are a product of how she has been treated all of her life as a victim of bullying, physical abuse, and sexual abuse, and the writing unfortunately treats her trauma as a joke to create fan service. The writers using Mikon's horrific trauma to sexualize her and make her the butt of jokes is incredibly uncomfortable to watch. There have been interpretations that Mikon's reactions during her execution are because she is happy that she's going to see her beloved Junko again, or that her joy during her execution was foreshadowing the remnants of Despair reveal. And while that is interesting, it doesn't erase how problematic the writing of her execution and whole character is. Moving on to the other aspects of this execution, Bye Ouchies, or Pain Pain Go Away in Japan, has a very childish title. It's likely that this title was chosen to represent represent all the bullying Mikon faced as a child. The large needle and arm rocket possibly represent how much Mikon dislikes oversized things, and this choice was made to give her more despair. The choice of an arm-shaped rocket has been interpreted to symbolize her left arm, which is noticeably bandaged. This was chosen for her execution as a way of reminding her of her trauma and the awful injuries she has had over the years, including on her left arm. There's also a common interpretation that what we see in Mikon's execution doesn't actually happen, with Monokuma stabbing her with a giant syringe and Mikon hallucinating the entire thing. Overall, Mikon's execution, while just as problematic as many elements of her writing and character are, has details that apply to Mikon's character to give her the most despair. Next is Gundam's execution, Gundam Tanaka's Stampede. Gundam Tanaka, the ultimate breeder, is faced with a stampede of wild animals running towards him, so he says goodbye to his hamsters, known as the 4 Dark Devas of Destruction, and leaves them in a safe place. He then draws a magic circle or an alchemy circle in the sand, which many have interpreted as him trying to escape his death, but I personally interpret the circle as him making sure his hamsters would be protected. The stampede then crashes into Gundam, and his hamsters run to his side. He smiles at them before he passes, and a bunch of animal angels bring him up to heaven. Interestingly enough, Gundam says during the Chapter 4 trial, "You must trample me underfoot and advance," and "trample this life. Trample it as though it was mere trash on the side of the road," which could have possibly been foreshadowing his execution. I want to step back to the magic circle again because that choice is the most Gundam thing Gundam could have done in his execution. Gundam puts on this persona that he's this edgy personification of evil, but on the inside, he's a quirky sweetheart who has severe 8th grader syndrome and over-exaggerates his entire life. The magic circle is meant to look powerful, tough, and otherworldly. However, if we go with my interpretation, he used the circle to protect his precious hamsters who he cherished and loved so dearly.
I'd also like to headcanon that he would also do little manifestations or gestures to protect Sonia, which evidently worked since she survives the killing game.
There is a common interpretation that he did the circle to protect himself only, but I am a protect the hamsters truthers, guys. He does say before his execution that he isn't giving up on his life, but I think the statement is another piece of his act. I think deep down he already accepted his fate, but was going down as the evil Prince of Darkness he tried so hard to be, even though that's not who he is in the slightest. Gundam's execution also features plenty of references to pop culture. For Western audiences, the most visible reference is The Lion King, as the desert setting and Stampede references how Mufasa died. Gundam's hamsters being by his side as he dies also references Simba finding Mufasa's body, and Gundam being the star at the end is similar to how Mufasa appears in the sky to speak to Simba. The music that plays during Gundam's execution is also called The Last High King and has a similar melody to The Lion Sleeps Tonight. Other references include the Japanese mecha anime Mobile Suit Gundam 0079, which is referenced in the Japanese title of his execution, Gundam Falling to the Earth, and shown in manga such as Full Metal Alchemist with the Circle, and JoJo's Bizarre Adventure with the Ascension to Heaven at the end. The use of shonen manga as inspiration is very interesting because it fits with Gundam's eccentric personality and 8th grader syndrome, as he wants his execution to be extravagant and befitting of a lavish grand person like who he tries to be. Lastly, the despair placed on Gundam in his execution is that in the end, he is taken up to heaven. He goes into his execution fully accepting that he would be sent to hell, but that's his persona talking. At his core, Gundam is very sweet, sensitive, and deep down really cares about people and animals. He does deserve to go to heaven, however, he reaches the most despair knowing that in death, his edgy and evil persona was seen right through and he was judged in the afterlife for who he really is. Next is please insert coin the execution of Chiaki Nanami and Monomi. As Chiaki is the ultimate gamer, her execution features references to famous video games and arcade games, hence the please insert coin title. Chiaki and Monomi, as well as a bunch of copies of Monomi, are first shot at with a tank which references Space Invaders, but she sees a possible exit and makes a run for it with Monomi. A giant Pac-Man machine runs towards them, flattening several Monomi copies until the main story Monomi is the only one left. Chiaki and Monomi continue running, but they are hit head-on with a glass wall as they become stuck in a giant game of Tetris. Monomi is crushed by a Tetris block, followed by Chiaki.
While this execution is absolutely perfect for the ultimate gamer, there are also a lot of thematic details within this execution.
First of all, it's important to note that Chiaki is the traitor of the second game. However, as it is revealed in Chapter 6, Chiaki was on the side of good and was only deemed the traitor because she was the only student who wasn't a remnant of despair. On top of that, Chiaki was also the only student who wasn't real. Chapter 6 reveals that the entire killing game was in a virtual reality as a way to help the remnants of despair become good people again, and while Chiaki was a real person, in the virtual reality, she was an AI created to help everyone move towards the side of hope.
So it's kind of genius that the traitor or artificial aid in the story where all the students are in a virtual reality game is the ultimate gamer.
Chiaki's dialogue constantly foreshadows that the students are in a virtual reality, so it's not too much of a reach to suggest that Chiaki's talent and execution also pointed to the truth behind Goodbye Despair's story. Also, crush motifs! Death by being crushed in Danganronpa is specifically reserved for characters that embody the themes of their respective games. We saw this with Makoto, Kyoko, and Junko in the first game as they symbolized the battle between hope and despair, so Chiaki getting this treatment represents how she exposed the truth of the story by being the traitor and the assistant of the Future Foundation's virtual reality. She also is a massive beacon of hope in the story, as she does help the survivors end the killing game in Chapter 6. Thus, Chiaki's execution cements her importance to the story of Goodbye Despair. Lastly, we have the Chapter 6 execution, forced to Shutdown. After the 5 remaining students end the killing game and escape the virtual reality, Usami returns and takes on alter ego Junko in a very magical girl-esque fashion. After tying her up in her rainbow magic, alter ego Junko is shattered into many pieces, as Usami disappears into a cascade of rainbow hearts, officially ending the virtual reality and the Goodbye Despair killing game. Fun fact, the hearts are said to symbolize Usami's love for the students in the game. This execution is quite short, so there isn't much I have to say about it besides a few things. First, since this is a digital version of Junko, it's fitting that Usami, one of Chihiro's creations, defeated her, which calls back to alter ego helping the students in the first game end the killing game.
Chihiro is honestly the MVP of Danganronpa.
Lastly, Junko's expression during this execution is strikingly different from her first one. In the ultimate punishment, she is ecstatic to experience the despair of death and is grinning ear to ear up until the end. In Forced Shutdown, she looks worried, humiliated, and annoyed. Everything was supposed to go in her favor, but the power of hope ruined her plans once again, and she is about to essentially die for the second time. She thought she won the fight between hope versus despair in this game after Chiaki's death, but the survivors and Chiaki made sure to end the killing game and return to the real world. She's also incredibly bored of this execution. As stated in the first game, the one thing Junko absolutely hates is boredom, which is why she is the way she is, and that shows in this execution. According to her, dying a second time should be more extravagant and despair-inducing than her first death. However, all of her plans were foiled.
That's all I have for you today. If you like this video, please make sure to give it a like, subscribe to this channel to join the SeaBunnies, and turn on the bell for notifications. Comment down below your thoughts, feelings, opinions, anything on the second Danganronpa game's executions, or any video suggestions for me. I'll see you all in the next video. Thank you so much.